Welcome to the Binge Breakers podcast. I'm Jacqueline. I am here to teach you how I overcame bulimia and my binge eating disorder, and how you can too. Through simple steps of mind management, repairing your relationship with yourself, understanding your habits, and intuitive eating.
Disclaimer: this recording is not intended to be utilized as medical advice or a medical diagnosis. If you think you're in need of medical attention or treatment, please seek it immediately. This recording will also contain sensitive subjects such as binging and purging, weight, and depression. Please listen at your own discretion and do what you think is best for you.
I'll kind of jump into it right away. The reason I wanted to bring you on is because, first of all, I love that your title is girlfriend coach. And I know that I'm sure you probably work with people that are married and have been in long-term relationships. Girlfriend just kind of implies a little bit more casual, and I think a lot of people are in that range, and sometimes they don't want to go to a relationship coach who just works with people that are married or something, because I feel like they maybe aren't at that stage yet. And I've had, a boyfriend for 8 years. So I feel like he is just my partner, even though we're not married. It's like, this is a long-term thing. So obviously girlfriend can mean a lot of things, but I just love that. And it just doesn't seem so serious. But the problems you talk about also are I relate to them a lot. I remember, and I can hear my clients talking about a lot of the problems that you discuss. So can you tell me, first of all, what got you started? Like, why did you become a girlfriend coach? I'm sure there's a story there.
Yeah, of course. And like for most people, I was a grumpy girlfriend before I became a grumpy girlfriend coach. And basically it started when I met my boyfriend. We've been together for 8 years this year. And I was 21 when we met, and I had never been in a relationship before. So I was just kind of like trying to figure stuff out. And it was a struggle because I had never been through anything like it before. I had never shared my life with someone or felt all the feelings or had all the jealousy, because before we met, I was like, oh, I'm super independent and super confident and I have no problems at all. And then it all came crashing down. So the first 5 years, or let's say the first maybe 3 years of the relationship, I was just getting worse and worse and worse and worse, and struggling with jealousy, insecurity, anger, all of that kind of stuff. And then I started trying to figure out a solution. I partially wanted an explanation. Why am I this way? What is wrong with me? Can someone diagnose me with something that explains why I am this way? Yeah. And I also tried to find a solution to it. So I went to therapy, went on and off birth control. All the advice says just you need to work on your self-esteem, just love yourself and everything will be wonderful. I had a bunch of tests done. I checked my thyroid. I was like, come on, please be my thyroid. Something, please just explain this.
It's crazy to wish for a medical condition, because at least it's a simple, tangible condition you can fix.
Yeah, maybe take some medication and you'll be fine. That would have been lovely. But that everything just came back normal. All the psychiatric evaluations, all the other stuff, it was just normal, you're healthy, everything is fine. No birth control made any difference, sadly. And it just kept going. I just could not figure out how to deal with it. And then eventually I found coaching, and especially the life coach school and Brooke's work. And within 2 or 3 months, everything changed. My entire life changed. My entire relationship changed, and I managed to solve these problems that I had on my own. And whatever I didn't manage to solve in that time frame, I knew how to solve. I knew how to start fixing it. I understood why I was feeling this way. Turns out it's because I have a human brain, not because I'm sick. So that's when I kind of figured out, okay, there is a way of solving this. It's not that complicated. It actually works. I then decided to get certified, and towards the end of certification, I was like, okay, what do I want to work with? So I kind of dabbled in some different categories of people to work with, and nothing really felt exciting or right. And then I just asked myself, what area of my life has been helped the most by coaching? And that was a super simple question to answer, because it was my relationship. And then I was like, okay, I think there are other grumpy girlfriends out there who need my help, because it really helped me. So that's how I ended up here.
Yeah, thank you. No, I can relate to when I joined the self-coaching scholars program, the life coach school. My relationship took a drastic increase in, and I think that tell me if you find this true, that one of the main things that helped me was taking responsibility for my shit and my drama in the relationships, or in the relationship, and not necessarily putting my drama on them, meaning like whatever was going on with them, I was making it mean a million different things about me, and just like keeping our brains separate really helped me take responsibility for what I
Mhm.
needed and not trying to get those things from him.
I was kind of dabbling in both. I was very aware that I'm the problem. I was the problem. My partner isn't doing anything wrong. He's not like flirting with other girls. He's not treating me like trash. He's doing everything right, and he's doing everything he can to like to help me. Like whatever I need to just be happy, he'll do it. But nothing worked. So I knew like I'm the problem. It's my brain that's the problem. I really want to fix it. But in the day-to-day kind of activities, I still took it out on him and still like got mad at him and still like I was in emotional childhood blaming him for a lot of things. But in the bigger picture, I was like, no, I am the problem. I know I'm the problem. And I
Mhm.
know that whatever solution there is to this, it doesn't involve him. It doesn't involve him going to couples therapy together so that he can learn how to fix things. Like it wasn't his thing. So I knew that. So that's why when I found Brooke's work and she was like, you can fix this on your own, I was like, oh my God, this is what I've been looking for the
Mhm.
whole time.
Yeah, well, it takes it into your own hand and you get to do things about it instead of like looking for someone else to solve it, or again, putting all the pressure on your partner to solve those things.
Mhm.
Um, so what's the most typical issue you see grumpy girlfriend struggling with?
Well, there are a lot of things. Like most of my clients struggle with the same kind of category of problems, but usually it has to do with having a lot of feelings that we don't understand. Like intellectually, we know better. We know our partners aren't doing XYZ. We know everything intellectually, everything is fine. Why am I feeling so awful? And then when I feel so awful, I act like a terrible person. Like I treat them poorly, I withdraw, I'm passive
Mm.
aggressive, I'm grumpy, I'm mad all the time, I punish them when they do things like that kind of stuff. So they've acknowledged their behavior and they don't like it.
Mhm.
And they also have acknowledged, I'm feeling a bunch of things that intellectually don't make sense. What's going on? And
Yeah.
that's where we kind of start tying the loose ends together and show that, okay, where are these feelings coming from? They're not coming from reality. They never do, even if things are kind of shady. Our
Mhm.
feelings don't come from reality. So showing them that, okay, it makes sense that you are feeling this way because look at what your brain is doing. Look at what you're thinking. And then it makes sense that you're acting this way because look at how you're feeling. If we just
Right.
like validate your brain and then validate your feelings, your actions are totally reasonable. Now, if we look at it intellectually, we can say, okay, I don't really like this. I don't want to continue this pattern. I want to change it. We can do that. But first, we need to like really understand this all makes sense on a primitive level. Everything you're
Mhm.
doing, logic. It's just not your
Yeah.
kind of like human logic.
Yeah, I think the hardest part is when you're upset and angry and then it makes no sense. It becomes incredibly frustrating
Mm,
and you just want to lash out at yourself, blame yourself and your partner. And they're just like, I don't know what's going on. It's confusing. And it's like,
mm,
I think of animals when they are cornered or like confused as a situation, they get like really aggressive because they don't know what's going on. It's scary.
mm,
So I like that you said, like, first of all, kind of validating what your brain is doing and making sense of the whole thing. And for those
mm.
of you guys listening really quickly that don't know, Katrin and I both come from the same school of thought where it's like your thoughts literally create your emotions, which then create your actions in life. So what she's referring to is a lot of times we think it's the situation that's making things crazy for us, but the feelings that you're experiencing, even though it is like there's a circumstance that may be upsetting to you, a lot of times it's your thoughts about those circumstances that are the most upsetting thing that's causing that amount of friction and emotion.
And that activates the flow of energy in your body that is designed to make you take appropriate action if the story you're telling is true. But that's the problem. Like, usually the story we're telling isn't objectively true, and therefore the emotional reaction and our actual reaction where we take action when we feel that way, it becomes kind of like, it doesn't make sense when we look at it that way. But if we look at it through what's going on inside of us, based on the story we're telling, the feeling that activates in our bodies, our actions make total sense. So that's just good to know.
No, you're not crazy. Like, it does. The lines are drawn here and here and here. So what do you do? Like, what do you do for people when they know what's kind of creating it, and they know like their thinking is not very helpful in the relationship? And yet, like, a common issue that bothered me a lot in my relationship, and then I see other people doing it too, is household chores. And I find, what for good or for worse, I still find a lot of women take on a lot more of the household chores in relationships. Myself, I can fall into that trap. And so then they'll get mad and be like, he's making me do this. He's like, he's being lazy, all these sorts of things. And it's really like he just didn't do the dishes or something. So how do you navigate that sort of problem with people?
There are different ways to tackle it, and usually I want to like look at it from all different perspectives. And one part of that is that just because your partner doesn't do it doesn't mean you have to. Like, that's a good place to start.
Like, I remember when someone told me that, I was like, not the same thing, but I literally came to a call, I was crying, and I was like, it's the dishes, and they're like, you don't have to do them. Just because he doesn't do it, you don't have to do them either. And she was like, why are you doing them? Because I want to, right? Anyway, keep on going.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I show my clients, is that you want the dishes done because you want them done. And if your partner doesn't do them, if you want them done, you're free to do them. But this whole like martyr thing where we're like, oh, and then I have to do them, and it's like, well, if you were single, who would you be blaming? Like, who would you then be grumpy at? It's like, you would do them because you want them done. And it's also very common to think that, well, my standards are correct and my partner's standards are wrong. My partner owes it to me to have the same standards as me. Otherwise, it's unfair. But like, you could easily lower your standards if you wanted to, and not have to do the dishes. Like, I'm sure if your partner lived alone, they would figure it out somehow. It might be messy and gross, but they would figure it out. So being like, you can like hold on to your righteous kind of like, it should be 50-50 and this is how it should be, and I deserve this and my partner has to, which is going to cause a lot of friction, a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, and it's going to exhaust you. Or you can just accept that if I want a higher standard than my partner, I can either change my partner or change my attitude about making sure my home has the standard I want. I just don't see any other reasonable option. You can be mad at your partner and tell them to change, but I'm sure your partner wants you to do things you don't really feel like doing all the time. And in those cases, you want your partner to lower their standard instead of you living up to theirs.
Right. I'm sure, honestly, when it's like specifically the dish example, your partner just wishes you didn't care also at that point, because clearly they don't care and they wish that you could just like let it go until either they got around to it or you got around to it. But what you said there, that was really powerful about it being like, you have certain expectations that they're not meeting. It's not necessarily, I mean, they could not be doing it because they think it's your job. And then maybe you should have a conversation with them. And then if they don't want to change or something like that, then you have to decide whether or not, like you said, you switch your partner or change his expectations or do something else. But it isn't necessarily that you're forced or you're the smarter. It is because you want to do them and whatnot. Which is, I think it's a hard pill to swallow. A lot of people,
sure.
Why do you think people want to play that kind of victim mode? Do you know why?
Well, I'm sure there are different reasons, but generally speaking, it's what we are fed daily. Like
Mhm.
the version of female empowerment that we're in right now is about telling the man what they should do, telling our partners how they should be, what they should do, what they shouldn't do, how they should be. Like telling other people, trying to control other people is seen as being empowered, as being strong and standing up for yourself and doing all the things. So if your partner does something you don't like, you better go tell him, because then you're standing up for yourself. I'm like, what in the world? You're like holding your power in your hand and you're like tossing it at them and being like, here, you need to do XYZ for me to be happy and be okay. That's not power. That's just like outsourcing all the things to other people. And I think that's why this was the hardest part for me to understand too. Like this was, but once it's sunk in, once I understood it, it's also the thing that changed the most. Because I was doing the cleaning, I was doing all the things, not all the things, but like I was doing a lot of the stuff.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
And I was mad about it, which drained my energy. But then when I realized, oh, I don't have to do any of it, I realized I want to vacuum. Like it's not like it's not the end of the world that I actually want to vacuum. So I will. Just cutting out the part where you're resentful and mad about it and think that, well, if I vacuum, my partner should vacuum too. Like, why? You're vacuuming. Like, why should he vacuum too? And then of course, we can like go to the extremes. Like you're not a maid, but if you turn into a maid, you did that. Like you are doing that. It's not your partner
That's
doing
really
that at
powerful.
you did that. So it's
Right.
your job to not be a maid. But if you want to keep your house clean, you get to do that if you want
Yeah.
to.
Or hire someone or get a different partner that wants to be your maid or something along those
Yeah.
lines.
And it's, of course, always okay to request, like, hey, can you vacuum? Hey, can you take out the trash? Usually we don't want to do that because they should just know, or they should
Oh my
just be
God.
willing to do it. And it's like, Jesus Christ, we can't
I
win
know.
when we do
I
it
know.
this way.
Yeah, the many times I've talked with my boyfriend about these things, because of course, like you, I think I had many arguments, many breakdowns about these things, and oftentimes he's like, "Well, why didn't you just ask me?" And I would gladly do that. I mean, and then he's like, "Of course, if I'm doing something, like hopefully you can wait a little bit, but I'll gladly do those things." And then my argument immediately was, "You should know, and like, how come I see these things and you don't?" But that's just because different people have different priorities, and clearly it's not a problem for them. I think we make it mean so much about us. We make it, and I mean, here's something I'll say. I think first of all, people are going to get triggered by this episode, but then it's going to help them. Because I think when you
Yes.
first tell someone like it's you, not them, they
Yeah.
get really upset. So for
Yeah,
you guys
of
out there
course.
listening, it's okay. Secondly, though, oh man, I lost my train of thought. There's something about responsibility. I don't know. It's gone now. But anyway, I feel like people are probably going to be triggered.
Yeah. And
Well,
I think it's just good to know that that is normal. And it's just because I'm offering a solution to something where you're white knuckling being right. Like it's very important. We just want to hold on to being right. And that's going to be the end of us. Like we are going to hold on to the sinking ship of it should be 50-50 and we should split all the chores equally and they should just know and read my mind and do all the things. We're going to hold on to that until we drown. Like that's because we're so like convinced that that's the right way of doing it. And the question is, what do you want in your relationship? Do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Because there's a quicker way to get to happiness, and it's not white knuckling. Like it should all be fair and equal and all the things.
That's really powerful. Like, do you want it to be 50-50 or do you want it to be happiness? I forget the exact words you said, but that's so true. I mean, so often things in life, I know Brooke says the 50-50 with emotions. And I think, of course, there are certain periods of life where it's not 50-50. It's like 100% this, 100% that. I don't think anything is really equal or will ever be. There's probably always a counterbalance somewhere. And I think that's a hard thing to accept, especially in, I think, female empowerment's great, obviously. But like you said, just trying to control others is not power. I mean, it is a type of power, but it's a power that
Yeah.
I don't think you want. You know, you want
It
power where you're
doesn't
empowering
create
everyone.
intimacy and connection, that we can know for sure.
No. Yeah.
Nobody likes being controlled that way.
No, yeah, we don't want to be controlled that way. So why expect your partner to be controlled that way? So what would you say are better ways to, like, so people know the problem, they know, how do you begin to navigate maybe trying to think differently in your relationship or just evolve?
With my clients that go through my program, thinking differently is step 3.
Mm,
So I have this 4-step process, and you kind of have to learn all 4 basics and then start applying them kind of simultaneously. But step 1 is always learning how to feel your feelings. And I'm sure you talk about that a lot too,
mhm.
because it really is the key to a lot of things. If we start trying to think differently, it's just not going to stick at all. It's like you're going to try to force your brain to think differently, and then your old thoughts are going to come up, and then your old feelings come up, and you're lost again because you're not capable of feeling. So we always start with paying attention to what you're feeling and being willing to have that feeling in your body without trying to make it go away or get relief from it, because acting out and like taking action on how we feel is always like a way of getting relief. We think we
Mm,
might be feeling our feelings when we're like fighting or telling our partners what our needs are and no, like we have this discomfort inside of us, and then to get relief from that discomfort we need to go tell someone something or we need to go do
right.
something. So first, in order to get control over our behavior, we need to learn how to process our emotions without reacting to them, and just like be a container for that discomfort and increase the capacity to be uncomfortable. Because when emotions are high, intelligence is low. We don't have access to our intelligent brain when our emotions are out of control. So that's step 1. Step 2 that I teach is using your prefrontal cortex to plan ahead and kind of like anticipate, okay, what's going to happen? What usually happens? What do I usually struggle with? And then we just think about it. Okay, I'm going to feel my feeling in the moment. But when that gives me access to my intelligence, what do I want to do instead? Like, just think
Mm,
about what behavior do I want to have instead? How do I want to show up instead? And then when we come to the heat of the moment, it's time to follow through. And how do we follow through? We process the feeling and then we do the thing anyway. And
mhm.
then step 3 is about thinking about your thinking, learning how to identify these thought errors that pop up in your brain that urge you to act like a grumpy girlfriend, that urges you to take this behavior you don't want to take. So you pay attention to the thoughts that kind of urge on this old programming. And then we have to do the work to kind of start figuring out what thoughts do I want to believe instead? What do I want to think in this specific moment? What do I have to think in order to take the action that I want? And then we need to just practice, practice, practice. And the 4th basic that I teach is how to fail really well. Because usually we
Mm,
just want to sweep our failures under the rug and be like, I'll do better next time. Or like, oh, I'm terrible. I'm never going to be able to do better. Instead, I want to teach my clients how to suck all the wisdom out of a failure and then move on. Like,
right.
really learn from it so that next time you have more information about what your brain does. It was probably a thought error that you weren't aware of that popped up, or you weren't willing to feel your feeling. Okay, good to know. Or your plan sucked, which is why it was really hard for you to follow through on it. And then we just
Mhm.
learn from that and do it better next time. And then we just practice. So that is kind of the process that I go through with my clients. And the most important, and the one that's the most counterintuitive and that most people want to skip, is the feeling your feelings part.
Yeah, because it's not super fun. And
No,
it doesn't seem useful when you first hear about it. It's like,
no,
feel my
not at all.
feelings, especially when you're feeling really crappy things. It's like,
Mm,
why is this serving any purpose other than to make me feel like trash?
mm,
But again, I'm working with a person right now who went through some pretty extreme trauma, and something like sometimes we just spend whole sessions talking about it. She needs to process through that because otherwise it's not releasing, and her brain just keeps going back to that place,
Yeah.
right? And no matter, you can like think all the useful things, but it's not
Mm.
going to help. It's not going to help like what's going on in her body, and the body still feels that. And so
Mm.
I kind of think like if you never process those emotions, it's just going to stay with you, and that's going to cause, it could cause actual health issues. You know, we all know that stress can be really bad for the body. But then also, I think we want to skip to those thought things because it
Mm.
feels like it's taking action. It feels like it's useful. But I like that your step 3, I think, as you said, is like focusing on what do I want.
Mm.
Maybe step 2, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But one of your steps is like, what do I want to do? What do I want to
Mm.
try? And then your 4th step was the failing thing, which I love
Mm.
because I can imagine, because I did it too. Whenever you do mess up in your relationship, this self-loathing comes in,
Yes.
and
And
you just want to
shame
take it
and
as an
guilt.
opportunity to be like, I am a horrible person. Look at me. I did this to my poor partner again.
Mm.
How could anyone love me? And then you never learn anything from that. And
No.
there's a reason for why you did what
Mm.
you did.
You just like in those moments, you tell yourself, I know better, I know better, I know better. Next time I'll do better. But we have no idea, what does that even mean? What does it mean to do better? It's like getting in a car and just covering the whole windshield and being like, okay, I'm going to drive to where I want to go. And it's like, you have no idea where you're going. Like, you don't
Yeah.
know what you want. And if we don't have a clear idea of what do I want instead, then how are we going to like make choices? Because choices need to be made ahead of time. In the heat of the moment, your primitive brain is so much faster than your prefrontal cortex. So if you haven't made any decisions ahead of time, you're not going to stand a chance. Like your
No.
programming is just going to start rolling, and you'll just have to be like, okay, let's go with it. Let's see where we end
Just
up.
write it.
Yeah.
Like a roller coaster. Yeah. Something I help people with is because when they're having urges to binge and stuff like that, a lot of times those urges just sound like actual thoughts, because they are.
Mm.
And it's helpful to actually write them down, what your brain is going to say, so that next time you can be more prepared for it and actually
Mm.
recognize them. Because at first you don't ever recognize them because they sound like you. But then when you can call them
Mm.
out, you can be like, oh, there's that thing I always do again. Do I want to do it again? Sometimes you do. But sometimes you
Mm.
get better about it and navigate it. And it sounds like it's kind of a similar approach with the grumpy
Yeah, of
girlfriends as well.
course. It's just that the grumpy girlfriends have urges to send a nasty text or go through their partner's phone or like be passive aggressive or shut down and not answer them or something like that. It's the same concept. It's just urge to do something different because the threat in the situation is just different than the threat that your clients are experiencing.
Yeah. Well, I know that a lot of people will ask this, or they'll be thinking this when they're listening to it. And I think maybe it comes from a place of like just trying to get under your skin. But what would you, someone's probably listening to this and probably being like, oh, this is all great, but what if like the person's actually abusive, or they are actually cheating, or they're doing these horrible things? What would you say about that?
I mean, that doesn't sound like a complete question to me. So if it was my client, I would have to ask more questions like,
Of
what are you
course.
thinking
Yeah.
it means? But ultimately, first of all, like the coaching that I do is with girlfriends in good relationships.
Okay. Yeah.
But there are clients who come to me where in the beginning it's like, oh, I'm the problem, I'm the problem, I'm the problem, my partner is lovely. And then as we work, we realize, okay, you're taking responsibility for your stuff, but your partner maybe isn't so lovely. And we kind of realize that. And
Yeah.
usually they end up leaving that partner towards the end of the program. But when it comes to my brain likes the extreme examples. So on my podcast, I use them a lot, like the cheating or like them doing something really, really bad. Okay, then what? Then what do we do? The way of kind of, I think, how should I kind of summarize it so that it makes sense? We always have the right to leave any relationship we want at any time. It doesn't matter if there's something objectively bad going on. Like there are people who stay in relationships where someone is cheating on them, and there are people who leave because their partner won't help up with chores. So like what's a deal breaker for you is completely subjective. And other people doing bad things, when you are at the effect of another person's choices, like you can't control that. Like if someone cheats on you, like you can't stop that. You can't control that. If someone physically harms you, you're just at the effect of their choice, like their free will, and that they are exercising it. The good news is you have free will too. And the worst option is staying and saying, you need to change. You need to do things differently. You are not allowed to do this. Then we're staying in a situation we might not want to be in. And then we're expecting the other person to make that situation okay for us. Like, where is our power in that? So we need to realize, and it doesn't work. That's the worst part. Like, it really, really doesn't work. So regardless of what's going on, or if we want to stay or leave, understanding that it's not our job to manage our partners. They get to do whatever they want, whenever they want, but we do too. And we get to leave if we want to. And if we are not capable of leaving, if they're like physically stopping us, like that's a crime. Like we don't need to coach on that. That is a crime to actually restrain someone. And of course, if you are in an abusive relationship or something like that, it can be really scary and difficult to leave and all of that kind of stuff. And then there is help to get. Like, that's not the coaching that I do either.
Yeah, no, and I wasn't trying to like pin you. I just knew people when
people think these things
say,
all the time.
Yeah, when you say like you have control over what you think about the relationship, it's not like you don't get to control your partner. They can do whatever they want. They immediately go to those scenarios because they're extreme. Brains like extreme. And it's like, I love that you said they get to do whatever they want. You get to do whatever you want too. And I think we forget that. We see like they get to do everything. And it's like, yeah, but you do too, because you're also a human being and you get to do whatever you want. You are allowed to leave. And I also think you, in the beginning, you brought up a really interesting point of people will come to you and their partner seems so lovely, but then they kind of realize maybe not. And something that has helped me when I've talked to people about their relationships is just, even if they decide not to leave that person, accepting that there are things with their partner that maybe aren't so lovely, and just sitting with that truth before they decide to leave or stay. Because I think so often people just want to turn a blind eye because they think, oh, if I admit that this is what's going on, then I have to do something. And that's not true. You can just admit it and leave it there too. You don't have to do anything about it.
Absolutely. That I talk to my clients. I mean, the majority, I would say like 95% of my clients love their partners, don't want to leave them, have really supportive, loving partners. Like, this is not a common problem that I deal with, but the ones that are like questioning their relationship a little bit, they're so scared of looking at all their options, looking at all the truth. Like, my partner is really lovely, but they can be an asshole too. Like they really can. Like this thing that they do, it's not very nice. Like, you might not want to be with someone who does that. And we can talk about it and have an open conversation about it and see it for what it is. You don't have to go and break up with them right after our call. Like, you don't have to. We get to explore things and then not act on them, but telling yourself the truth is going to improve your relationship with you. And that's what coaching is all about. Like, we just want to make sure that you got your back. And it's really hard to have your own back when you're lying to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't help anything. And just because the truth is out there doesn't mean you have to do anything about it. And I think it's like, it helps get your thoughts clear so that you can make the best decisions possible for your life, whatever they are. And
because as long as we're like,
go ahead.
As long as we're like thinking that my partner is doing these things wrong and I need to change my partner, I need to communicate my needs to my partner and tell them how they should be, it's really hard to make empowered, loving decisions about what we want for ourselves when we're constantly giving our power away to them. So if we can just like take our power back and then give them their power back, so all their choices, decisions, behaviors, all their things, give it back to them, and we own our stuff, then we're like, oh, I have all my power in my hands and I get to choose what I want to do. And it's so much easier to access like the future you want from that place and start making decisions that lead you towards that future. Because sometimes we're like in relationships and we're like, I know my partner can be this person that I want, so I'm going to make sure they become them and then we can be happy. Instead of being like, okay, this is what I want in a relationship. Is my partner that partner? Is my partner the one who will do that with me or whatever? Then if that's not the case, we need to be honest about that too. It doesn't mean we have to leave right away. We can just like sit with that for a while.
Absolutely. And you know who you are at that point. You know the truth of what you want. Also, I know that you weren't saying this, but you said the word happy, and I just thought like a lot of people rely on their partners to make them happier, or they think when they'll get to this point, then I'll be happy. How do you navigate conversations like that? Or what do you tell people when they're like, if we could just get here, then I would be happy? What do you usually say?
I mean, at this point, I know that that's never the case, because even when we explore it in our coaching conversations, I'm like, okay, let's say he did that thing. How would your brain use that against them? Like, how would your brain discount that evidence of like why you should be happy? Because usually the brain is just like, he's just doing that because you asked him to. He doesn't really want to do that. So even if your partner follows your rules and does everything flawlessly, your brain, you still have your underlying belief that they don't love you, or that you're not worthy, or that you're not good enough, or that they're going to leave. So no matter what your partner does, your brain is still going to be able to use that as evidence of your core belief. Like it doesn't matter what your partner does. And the same thing is true for what they're doing now. What they're doing now might be lovely, but you have no idea because you have this underlying belief that they're going to cheat on you and leave you.
Right. No, that was brilliant. Especially the question you asked is like, how would your brain use it against you? I see that so many times with my clients when they'll come to me and they're like, I didn't binge and purge like for the first time, or like they had a week where everything was normal and they felt good, and they're like, yeah, it was just, it's a fluke. It was because of these things, probably isn't going to last, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, wait, they did this or this happened. Why are you doing this? And so same thing with your clients. Your partner does something nice and you immediately discount it as, oh, they're just doing this because of that. It's just like so classic human behavior. And it's so interesting to think, oh, the things that you're thinking right there, that can be kind of changed over time with the right amount of processing and thinking correctly. So it's cool.
I mean,
and
all of these things, we really need to work on the underlying beliefs, because all of the asking the partner to compensate for our underlying beliefs just doesn't work. It's just a waste of everyone's time, because if your partner like brings you flowers when you want flowers, you'll just be like, oh, he did something wrong. He probably already has cheated on me. Everything is awful. Or when my clients have a really good week and they're not grumpy and they actually feel happy, they're like, oh, I haven't felt jealous and angry this whole week. Does that mean that we're drifting apart and that we're not a good match and that we should break up? I'm like, wait, what? No, that's not what it means.
Do you find that some people get kind of addicted to the like fights and the highs and the like intense angry emotions? Addicted is the wrong word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And I think not my clients don't, not on an intellectual level, not where they can see that, oh, there's no drama, I missed the drama. But I do believe that our brains will always do, whenever we're living on kind of autopilot, subconscious, we're not being intentional, the brain will always do whatever it can to get back to the status quo, like get back to what we're used to. So if we're super used to the fighting and all that kind of stuff, and we're like, I guess this is a relationship, I guess this is normal, when we take that away, there is going to be discomfort. Happiness for grumpy girlfriends is one of the most uncomfortable things ever. Just enjoying your relationship is the hardest thing you'll ever do. It's really uncomfortable and it's really hard. And it's something we need to practice and be like, it's safe for me to be happy right now. It's safe for me to enjoy myself. It's safe for me to not be mad. It's really, really, really hard. So like, it's not that we want the drama, it's just that that's what's familiar to us. So that's why we kind of gravitate in that direction.
Yeah. Positive emotions can be just as uncomfortable as classically uncomfortable emotions, classically bad emotions. And it's because, again, like you said, it's unfamiliar, and it's just like feeling happy can sometimes be overwhelming. Like every time I look at my dog, who's the cutest little baby ever, and I just see him and I'm like overwhelmed with joy. And then I immediately go to like, what if I lose him? You know, what's going to happen if he dies? So it's like this mix of like love and pain at the same time. And I think,
isn't that exactly what a relationship is?
yes. Because you have something to lose, you know, and it's like something you love so dearly. And if you know, it's vulnerable because if you were to lose that, something you care about. It's like the classic movies where it's like, I don't want to get too close to anyone because if I leave them, but it's so true, you know. So thank you for explaining that. I think that sums it up clearly. Okay, to wrap things up, what would be one thing you'd say to someone if you could give one piece of advice to them if they're struggling in their relationship, that their partners are so lovely?
Well, I guess the best advice is listen to my podcast. Like that would be all encompassing because there's so much advice on there.
Katrins podcast is the Grumpy Girlfriend podcast. It's excellent and very, very helpful. And you have a lot of good guests on there too.
Yeah. So, I mean, the advice depends. It probably is like a day-to-day kind of thing. But right now, what's on my mind is really just you can be right or you can be happy. And that is sometimes the absolute hardest pill to swallow for most people, because we would rather be right and miserable than happy and wrong. And if you are struggling in your relationship right now, it's a good relationship with a loving partner and you want to be happy, then there are a lot of things you're going to have to be wrong about in order to be happy. Like you really have to see that everything you're right about right now has created what you have. And you have a lot of lovely things too. Like you have your partner and you have a lot of maybe your career or something else that's really lovely. So you're right about a lot of things too that have created amazing results for you. But where you see that I don't like these results, I don't like being a grumpy girlfriend, I don't like struggling with jealousy or insecurity, that means you're wrong about something. And exploring and being willing to be wrong in order to be happy is scary, but worth it. It's very, very good work to do.
Yeah, that was some very hard truths, but I completely agree. You can either be right and unhappy or happy and wrong. And it takes a lot of courage to admit that you're wrong. Don't exactly know why. I mean, I kind of do, but I don't. But I can relate to it strongly. Wanting to like die on that hill is such a primal thing as well. So thank you for saying that. Okay,
and I want to point out also just quickly on that note that when I say it like this, I think a lot of people can hear that, okay, if I'm not okay with something in my relationship and that causes me pain, maybe I'm wrong about that and it should be lovely. Like I should be happy about it and everything should be fine. Sometimes the thing you're wrong about is who you've chosen to spend your life with. And that hurts too. Like sometimes the happiness is outside of the relationship and you're white knuckling being right about this is my person. And I'm going to do everything in my power to make them my person. And I'm going to tell them what to do and how to act and how to be. Like, no, like sometimes that's causing you pain. Being right about that is causing you pain. And sometimes being right about like, my partner should vacuum causes you pain and you might want to be wrong about that. Like maybe your partner shouldn't vacuum. So both sides, being right or being happy doesn't always mean you should stay. It just means that sometimes happiness is on the other side of having been wrong about something.
No, you're right. Sometimes ending, like being out of a relationship, can be the thing that will create, again, I don't want to say like happiness, but the peace that you're looking for. It's not always staying in the relationship that's the right thing, and forcing something that can be the thing that you're wrong about. Totally right on that. And I know a lot of people listening in on this podcast right now probably blown their minds, first of all, especially if they're struggling. But then Secondly, they're like, oh God, I have a lot of thinking to do now. So, because
Mm,
it's kind of a taboo topic to like even dabble and question thoughts in your relationships. So thank you for bringing that up and bringing that to our
mm,
attention. And I'm excited for people to listen to this. Where
mm.
can people find you at if they want to know more?
My Instagram, Katrin Berndt. I'm sure the spelling will be somewhere on this episode. It's not something
It's
people can
spelled
usually guess.
Berndt, right?
Yes, and Katrin is just Katrin. That can be hard for some people too. So my Instagram or my podcast, like the Grumpy Girlfriend podcast, and something I want to say about the podcast or just about my content in general is, and we've kind of touched on it, is it's safe to listen to. Like it's safe to explore this stuff. It can be your little secret, and it doesn't mean you're going to break up with your partner. It doesn't mean you're going to stay with your partner. It doesn't mean anything. What I do on my podcast is just present you with all of your options. And within that little bubble that we're in when you're listening, we just explore everything, even the bad options. We explore those too, just so that
Mm-hmm.
you know that you have all these options available to you. And I show you, like, doing thought work here creates this result, doing thought work here creates this result, and you are always in control. So I never tell you what to do. I never know what's best for you. I never tell you to stay or leave. And I think that's really important, because I know that I was kind of scared of exploring this stuff when I was struggling, because I thought someone would tell me to dump my partner, and I really didn't want to. So that kind of
Mm-hmm.
made me scared to explore that. And I just want everyone to know that it's safe. It's safe to have these thoughts and think about things. It's only going to make you stronger and maybe even more committed in your relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's thank you for saying that, because people do the same with my podcast. Like they don't want to know, people to know that they're listening to it for other reasons, but they also sometimes don't even want to explore it themselves because they don't want to maybe face truths that are going on for them. And from personal experience, I know that the thoughts that the areas in life that I hear people talking about that I'm most shut off to, and I'm like, I don't want to go there right now. I don't know. That's not for me. And I have a problem, like usually means that there's something there to be discovered. And like you said, you're not telling them what to do. You're just presenting you with, here are things that could be helpful to you. So that's a brilliant way to phrase it. Yeah. All right. Thank you for being on the podcast. You have been lovely. And again, you've definitely stirred some brains today. So
yeah, hopefully.
I'm